if you're really serious about trying to avoid the dyes, I would study up and look up, what are these names changing to? Yellow number 5, for example, is going to, I believe, tartrazine.
Mhm.
So there's things that are happening on the food labels that would be good to know about. Welcome back to the Illuminated Path. This is episode 77. What are we talking about today?
We're doing a little intro on how to read food ingredient labels, things to look out for. We were saying this could definitely be a really long episode, so we're going to try to keep it simple.
Yeah, I want to make this like a crash course. I said to Kate, this could be a 6-hour masterclass. But I think we got a lot of really great feedback way back when the podcast started on, I think it was episode 6.
Episode about food.
Yeah, food, the standard American diet, nutrition. So let's talk a little bit about that today. How's the week?
Good. When this comes out, I'll be 1 day away from 22 weeks.
Yeah.
I've been feeling the baby move a little bit more.
Mm-hmm.
Not every day, but it's definitely like I notice something's going on in there, and it's really, really cool.
Yeah, it's exciting.
That's all I got for updates. We're doing all the housework, all the things, outside work.
Yep. A lot on the house. It's really good to have the basement. Our offices are down here. We are working down here. I've been able to trade and have my office like set up down here.
Yeah.
Crushed it this week. It was great. And I've gotten my walking treadmill out. So I've been walking a lot more, while I'm trading, which is nice.
We've been doing a lot more exercise. It's finally nice out, like 60s and 50s, which we love. More sunshine. I've had over 10,000 steps every day this week.
It's been good.
We went on our first bike ride. It was a short one, but we got out there on the trail, and that was 4 miles we did.
Yeah. Yep.
It felt really nice.
Really good. Looking forward to warmer weather and getting out there more.
Yeah. Any other updates?
No, I was going to say, let's get it moving because I know this could very well go on a long time, but I don't really want it to. I like when our episodes are short. So let's start with ingredients.
Yeah. So really just like when you're reading food labels, the easiest way that I typically will look at a food label and decide if I believe it's going to be something I want to eat or not is there are minimal ingredients. Okay, it shouldn't take you 5 minutes to read a 100 ingredient long list. If it's that long, it's more than likely not like ingredients it's more than likely not just like whole food ingredients. That's not to say that there won't be some ingredients that aren't specifically whole foods. Like I can't think of anything at the moment, but not just like completely chemically processed like additives.
Well, my thing too is necessity. We went to my parents' house recently and my mom grabbed some orange juice and I looked at the ingredient list and there's like preservatives, artificial sweeteners, things to color it. It's got concentrate in it. There's all kinds of stuff. And I looked at her and I was like, I kind of explained, this is a situation where like it's kind of just like necessity. Like, why does all that need to be in there? It doesn't. You're having like synthetic preservatives and things in orange juice. And that's why like people give us crap, but it's like I buy organic because there's one ingredient on it. It's orange juice. Why does orange juice have 10 different ingredients?
It doesn't need all of that. That's not to say, I know that people in the initial food episode were like, I said something about like everything being chemicals or not chemicals or whatever. Like, yes, these types of things are still processed, but there's a difference between something being processed and like ultra processed. That's kind of how I differentiate. Yes, orange juice comes from oranges, and that should be the only ingredient.
Yeah, I think.
But it's processed into that orange juice, and that's okay.
Right, but like clarify too, like in our modern world, most of what you go and buy at the grocery store is processed.
Right. It's like chemically, it's like man-made ingredients in a factory
Right.
versus creating something out of real food ingredients that is processed to then become a food.
Yeah, and I
That's really like how I see the difference.
like that orange juice is processed, but orange juice that would have all these preservatives and chemicals and things in it, that would be more ultra processed.
Yeah.
You
You don't need to change the color. You don't need
right,
to add more sugar. Oranges are naturally sweet on their own. Like
right,
there's
right.
so much extra in there that you don't need. And that also brings me to my next point. Like there's a lot of terms that you'll see on packaging that are just marketing terms that have no regulation. Like even that orange juice probably said the word natural.
Yep,
The word natural means nothing.
yep.
You can say natural on a box of Oreos, and there is nothing that they would get in trouble for.
Yeah, it's not a regulated term. They're perfectly allowed to put it on pretty much anything.
Yeah. So that's just kind of like a brief overview. And then we wanted to kind of talk about some common things to be mindful of. But again, like your basics is like look at the label. Do you recognize what you see? Do you
Right.
recognize the components that are making up this item of food that you are choosing to eat?
Yeah. So, I'll start because this is one that started affecting me more recently. Nitrates and nitrites. So these are very common in cured meats. It's a salt. It usually says like sodium nitrate, sodium nitrite. Um, they're not something to like demonize. They do naturally occur. But you'll see like we buy obviously healthier beef sticks and things. And so what a lot of companies will do is a healthy alternative for it is celery powder because it has naturally occurring nitrates and nitrites that can be used to preserve that meat without the chemical. Now, the reason these are something to consider is really it depends a lot on your heart. So I've gotten heart palpitations from them. And there are some studies you can Google and go look at nitrates and the effect on the heart. Um, and it is a big reason why we tell pregnant women no cured meats. So, obviously, if it can affect a pregnant woman or possibly a fetus, it's probably not great other times either. So, I will generally stick to naturally occurring versus like heavily ultra processed cured meats. Um, so, if it's got celery powder, I'll have it. If it's like sodium nitrate, sodium nitrite, or like some sort of heavily processed meat, I generally avoid it because it tends to be in very high quantities. And I have had heart palpitations in, when I've had that stuff.
Yeah.
Sugar.
So there's two things to kind of mention on sugar. One, a lot of our stuff is overly sweetened and has an excessive amount of sugar. So when you're looking at an ingredient label, look at the added sugars that's like per serving and
Yeah.
really think about how much sugar you consume in a day. And if you're literally eating all like a whole day's worth of sugar in one thing. So that's one thing about sugar, like how much. The
Yeah.
other thing is, are you getting real sugar or is it completely fake artificial sugar? You always want to look for the real sugar. If you're going to have sugar, you're so much better off having real sugar. We will get into organic, but we always prefer to have like organic. So, like organic cane sugar, coconut sugar, monk fruit,
Yeah.
sweetened with honey or maple syrup, even like dates, things like that.
But that's something to mention too. I think a lot of people get caught up on like, oh, I see sugar in it. And like, ideally, no, you're not having a ton of added sugar. I've at points in my life tried to limit my sugar intake to 30 grams of sugar a day. That's really hard to do. And I think for us, we don't have really a limit. We've done added sugar detoxes where you just
Mhm.
don't have anything if it has added sugar. Um, One thing that we do is we don't have like a hard reference of like this much added sugar is bad, but we kind of look at what is a serving and how much added sugar is in that. So if
Right.
it's like a little sweet treat cube and it's 20 grams of sugar, I'm not getting it.
Right.
For that, I'd be looking maybe 5 grams or something like that. So we just kind of take a snapshot of like, does that seem like a reasonable amount? Um, and even that obviously is not going to be perfect. I mean, especially if you're living in America, like everything's got way too much sugar.
Yeah, but there's almost always options that have a lower sugar amount,
Yeah.
and usually those with a lower sugar amount, I'm not going to say always, but usually they have just better ingredients, less ingredients overall, because they're not trying to pump up the sugar so much that it's like this addictive, crazy, high processed food.
Right. And so I think my point to circle back is like don't get caught up on just because it has cane sugar or organic cane sugar or something like that. That's not necessarily bad. That could be a more natural form of sugar. I would look at, does it have artificial sugars and sweeteners? Um, a big one. So aspartame has had like definitely gotten a bad rap in recent years, and like there are studies on it, and these companies have like made campaigns trying to be like, well, it wasn't good conditions for the study. Same with sucralose, which as I understand is a little more natural but still commonly synthetic. The one I see very often in most health foods, quote unquote health foods, or companies that are greenwashing and like trying to look healthy,
Yeah.
is acetyl flame potassium. So that's an artificial sweetener, commonly called ACE K. It's just not good. I mean, you've got all these things, and my thing is you'll never find these on their own. You will always see multiple. Um, I'm not really going to get into stevia because that's a whole other conversation. Um, Not great, not terrible. We'll leave it at that for now.
I wouldn't consider it artificial. It's not the
Right.
worst thing. We have things with stevia occasionally.
Yeah. Yeah.
But more realistically, like if we're having sugar, it's real sugar and it's one of the ones that we said earlier,
Yeah.
cane sugar, coconut sugar, honey, maple syrup, dates, monk fruit.
I could eat coconut sugar by the spoonful. Actually, that's a lie. I have. Um, Love coconut sugar. So yeah, keep an eye on those things. When you look at the ingredient label, you will also sometimes see added sugar and cane sugar. And then it also has sucralose, aspartame, and acetyl flame potassium. And those things, they don't count toward the sugar content. So they're only counting the natural sugars. And then you have all these artificial sweeteners in there.
Mhm.
So really look at like the chemical makeup of how much of this product is sugar and sweetener. So keep an eye on those things. Those are three very common artificial sweeteners.
Yep. Then we have dyes, which looks like red number 3 is officially being banned.
Yep.
Thank goodness. Although that is just a very small starting point because truly we need to ban all of the dyes.
Yeah, if you really want to learn more about the dyes, I talked about this in our episode about the standard American diet, but there's a color wheel. You can go look and see the dye and which part of the body, the biological system that it affects.
Mhm.
And the vast majority of those dyes have been linked to cancer or some sort of dysregulation, inflammation. Now, what I will say is, since it's coming to light and there are now a lot more studies, a lot of these companies are renaming the dyes. So if you're really serious about trying to avoid the dyes, I would study up and look up, what are these names changing to? Yellow number 5, for example, is going to, I believe, tartrazine.
Mhm.
So there's things that are happening on the food labels that would be good to know about.
Yeah, there's plenty of ways to dye foods naturally.
Yep.
It's been shown over and over again that other countries do have naturally dyed foods,
We've gotten
and
tons of stuff that was dyed red with beet powder.
right,
And it's like, I don't care about the color, but if you insist on dyeing it, sure, use beets.
yeah. We know people who have shared, stories of their children having red 40, and in 30 minutes, their
Yeah.
entire personality changed, and um, they became like a different child. And so these are things that are happening, and they affect your brain. They just really do a lot to your body, and they're not good for you. So there's so much more we could get into that, but my hope is that we continue to get rid of them because we don't need them.
Yeah. Yeah. So dyes, definitely look for things. You'll see like paprika extract, you'll see beets, you'll see blueberry powder, you'll see
Spirulina for
spirulina for
green.
like
Yeah.
blue or green. So that's something where you can read the label and have a general understanding. It's not going to take a ton of education and knowledge because it's pretty clear what they're dyeing it with.
Right.
If you see, it's dyed and you don't see something on the label, it might be like a chemical term like tartrazine or something like that.
Mm.
Aside from that, you have flavor boosters. So these we talked a little bit about in episode 6, and kind of going to fact check myself. I think I said yeast extract is MSG. As I understand it, they are not the exact same thing, but they are very close. So maltodextrin, yeast extract, and MSG, which is, I believe, monosodium glutamate, those things are used to enhance the flavor. You'll also see it a lot in ultra processed foods that they've manipulated the salt, sugar, and fat content. And that is obviously how they make foods addictive. Um, there's not a whole lot to really cover here. Know if it's in the food. You will see these a lot in like chips or Doritos or things where you are grabbing it out of a bag and you have trouble stopping. So that is a big reason why I will not get a lot of things that have yeast extract or MSG because they're designed to make you overeat.
Yep.
Maltodextrin is kind of a 50-50. Like sometimes it's naturally made, sometimes it's not. It's not always great. Oftentimes it's not. And a lot of times it's something that is in the product, but there's loopholes that they don't actually even have to disclose it. Thinking about you, LMNT electrolytes. So those are some flavor boosters to keep in mind, especially when you're looking at ultra processed foods. If you see those things, maltodextrin, yeast extract, or MSG, it is possible you may have trouble stopping yourself with that food.
I used to say I was like addicted to Cool Ranch Doritos before
Yeah,
I
you
ever
probably were.
looked at my food. I would sit down with a bag, and I mean, you just like can't stop.
Yeah,
It's crazy.
and that's something too where again, find your balance. For us, like we don't get certain things, but if you really love it, okay, maybe, put it in a bowl, grab yourself a serving and walk away.
Yeah.
See if that works for you. It doesn't really work for me, but I'll get 3 bowls. Um
I looked it up real quick,
yeah.
just to like close the loop on it. So yeast extract is a natural flavor enhancer derived from yeast cells, but it does contain glutamic acid, which contributes to the savory taste.
Yeah.
MSG is a synthetic flavor enhancer that is 100% glutamic acid. So
Oh, okay.
yeast extract contains it.
So it's more of a natural way of getting it in there.
Yeah, but they're still both very much contributing to like
Overeating and that sweet, salty, savory.
Yep.
Okay. Good to know.
Mhm.
Natural flavors.
So natural flavors are another one that drive me absolutely insane because there's that marketing term natural again that
Yep.
you have no regulation around, and it is just this overarching term. And I tried looking up how many different things can be considered natural flavors, and I couldn't find the number. But what I did find was that something that uses the ingredient on a label that says natural flavors, it's like a mixture that contained more than 100 chemicals, all combined into this one thing that they just plop on the ingredient label and just say it's just natural flavors.
Yeah,
It's just natural.
that's why that one drives me nuts because you have this whole ingredient label and then you have natural flavors, and that I've seen the number as high as like 800,000 different ingredients that fall into that category.
That can be used to like, yeah, make
Yeah.
this combination. And it can include all sorts of things, solvents, emulsifiers, flavor enhancers, preservatives. And it's just a chemical concoction that is thrown as one ingredient
Yeah.
on your label, which is crazy. Again, they get to use the word natural. Like
Yep.
natural to me means real. And that's just not the case. It's completely fake.
And so that's one that's coming to light a lot more. I will tell you, if you really try to cut natural flavors from any foods you're buying, you will have a very difficult time. Um, unless you're really truly sticking to like
Whole Foods.
whole foods only, you don't
There
really.
are good brands out there, though,
Yeah,
for other types of processed foods that do not use natural flavors.
there's good brands. I'm just saying it's tricky and it's in a lot of things. A lot of things.
hmm I will say, though, there is a difference, again, between just natural flavors and organic natural flavors.
Yeah.
Organic natural flavors do have more regulations around them. They have to meet the USDA standards of being derived from at least 95% organically grown ingredients and processed without synthetic solvents or artificial preservatives.
Yeah.
Those two things can be in just regular natural flavors, but not in any that are organic. So, again, it's like a balance. If you see something that is organic natural flavors, it's a little bit safer.
Yep.
Still not perfect, but again, like we try to teach balance. We're not going to never have natural flavors, but there are certain foods that we've cut out, found a better alternative, like our electrolytes.
Yeah.
That's one that so many companies ingredients look pretty good and then they throw natural flavors in there.
Yeah. Which like is the entire flavoring mechanism.
Right. So the ones we use are Flav City. I wish I was sponsored by them,
One day.
but they don't use natural flavors. So the flavor is just real ingredients.
Yeah. So I want to keep this moving. I'm going to move on. I have one last point. Nobody's going to like this one. I'm going to preface this with it is not conspiracy theory. This is supposedly the response to food shortages, which is a whole conversation. But it is now becoming very common to use bugs in food ingredients. There are several companies that are doing this. A lot of it is backed by, you guessed it, billionaires. Um, One that is very common, I might butcher this, it's called the cochineal bug. Cochineal. Cochineal, I don't know. It is a scaly insect. It's red. So it is used now sometimes for red dyes. Wonderful fact about this, it is actually a parasite. And so it takes, I believe I read it, millions, if not, let's say thousands, if not millions, of these bugs to create red dye. Um, there's also a push for crickets, mealworms, all kinds of things that are being used, especially if you're buying like Tyson chicken nuggets. I know that they used it briefly. I don't know if there was pushback and they stopped, but there are same thing where they're renaming it. They're not putting crickets on there. They're putting some sort of, what the species scientific name is, and people can't pronounce it or don't know it. So it's never been more important for people to understand how to read food labels.
Yeah.
Um, there's a lot of stuff that is happening in the name of the bottom line because bugs are cheap, but also, if you really, obviously, I don't want to be eating bugs. I don't know about you guys, but if you want to, really advocate for yourself and understand what you're putting in your body, a lot of the ingredients we just went through are some of the most common things that you'll see.
Yeah. So to kind of wrap up, your best bet is buying whole foods
Yep.
and making things at home. We find a balance. Sometimes we're going out and giving ourselves a little treat and we're buying some cookies that have, minimal ingredients. And other times we're buying the individual ingredients ourselves and making homemade cookies. Like
Yeah.
there is a way to balance it. There's a way to um, buy processed foods with whole ingredients to make that processed food. And it takes some time to understand how to like read labels. But something that I wanted to share also related to what I said earlier, there's an app. It's completely free. It's called Bobby Approved. And it is an app made by Bobby Parrish. He's the owner of the Flav City place that we get the electrolytes from. And it's so easy. All you do is scan the barcode of a food, or you can type it in the search bar, and it will come up with either a thumbs up or thumbs down. And you can click on it, and it highlights any of the ingredients that are not quote unquote Bobby approved. So he's going to point out for you so you don't have to memorize
Yeah.
what these things are. He's going to point out the ingredients in that product. If it is a seed oil, refined or artificial sugar, preservative, that's like a harmful preservative, a GMO, artificial or natural flavors, artificial food dyes, ultra processed ingredients, harmful toxins, and harmful fragrances.
Yeah.
So make it easy on yourself. If you don't have the time to be studying these things, like you start using that and it always shows like alternatives with better ingredients and you can decide for yourself. Like if all the
Yeah.
ingredients look pretty good and then you see just natural flavors in there and you're like, okay, well, this time I'm just gonna go with it. At
Yeah.
least you have some of that knowledge and awareness.
I will say, I think that app does a really good job because we've had times where like we scan something and it basically lists the ingredients out for you and it highlights it and puts it in like a bold red, and tells you like, this is what it means, and this is why I don't like it.
Yeah.
But having that information, you can then look at it and say like, okay, I understand, but I'm going to get it today. It's just natural flavors, whatever. And that was where we started. We cut out a lot of things before we really started trying to cut natural flavors.
Yeah.
So there are other things that we could talk about, seed oils, all kind of refined sugar versus that, but that app will give you a lot as you start going into grocery stores and learning about this stuff. Um, I think everything we covered today is a good starting point.
Yeah. And then the last thing is if you can buy USDA organic that has more um specific guidelines, not guidelines, like requirements to
Yeah.
be labeled USDA organic. And so if you're looking at two things, it's almost always going to be better to get the organic version. They're, everything that is USDA organic is not perfect, but it's just one way to, again, make some healthier swaps.
Yeah, I think if you're really trying to make some healthier swaps, obviously, like Kate said, USDA organic not going to be perfect. You will still see organic and like almost like organic, um, artificial. Like there's sneaky things in there.
Well, they have like organic natural flavors, which we covered before, or they might have like
Right.
organic seed oils, which like,
Right. You'll see kind of some stuff like that. But my point is, don't even, if you're at the start, don't even worry about that or get into it yet. Just start leaning more toward organic. You're going to see fewer ingredients on that label. And there's generally practices in place that, ensure that it's a little cleaner.
mhm,
Uh, One of the things that comes to mind is before like crops can claim organic, don't quote me on the exact time, but it's something like they have to not use pesticide for like 2 or 3 years before they can claim that. So there are practices and things that will help kind of limit your exposure to different toxins.
yep.
Anything else?
No, I think that covers our intro to reading your food labels. So take it into your own hands and you'll probably feel better.
Yeah, for sure. All right. Thank you guys for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.